My name's Stephen Ammann, and I'm an LMSW and a CSAT candidate, and I am in private practice, and this is...
I'm Stephen Lanzet. I am the founder at Boise Counseling Center, and together we run a program for sex addiction on an outpatient basis. So our presentation is really about how we help people get in and commit to a recovery program and help them figure out what treatment option is right for them. And so I'll let Stephen talk about kind of how that works.
Okay. So we've come up with the ABCs of commitment to treatment, and the first one is assess. So during this phase of our treatment, we're trying to build rapport. So one of the ways we do that is to move the client from shame to grace and give them a hope of what recovery can give them in the future. We get a extensive history, focusing in on the sexual part of their history. We explain what the SDI is and kind of assign that as something to have them do before the next session. And during this, we're keeping in mind that they are being very vulnerable and possibly telling us something that they promised they would never tell anybody and that they would take to their grave with them. So we want to really honor that piece of it in that first session. And as we hear their story, we're looking for what we call the hammer, and it's that thing that we can use when they're starting to feel better to keep motivating them towards the recovery process.
Great. And then if we think that they are indeed dealing with sex addiction, we give them the sexual dependency inventory, which they take at home and they bring back. And then when they come in for their next session, we interpret the SDI, and we do a fairly extensive interpretation. And if they tested positive for sex addiction, we're really trying to help them understand that this is a problem and they have it. And somehow by spending time interpreting that assessment, it really seems to cement the relationship and help them understand that they need to do something. And then we give them treatment options, and we use an automobile metaphor. So we say there is the Mercedes-Benz of options, and that is going to an inpatient treatment. We say that that is just like having a Mercedes-Benz, all the bells and whistles, very elegant solution. They'll get there, they'll shrink your head, they'll help you figure out what this is all about. They'll help deal with trauma if there's trauma, and they'll help bring your family in and help heal and create a plan for when they come back to us on how we can continue to help them. We warn them right away, we probably don't need to do that unless they have a very serious problem, but we like to let them know. The next level is the Honda Accord of options, and that is also very reliable, but less money, and that is an outpatient program. We don't have that in our town, so sometimes we'll use a 2-week intensive outpatient in another city, and then they come back and work with us. And then the final one is the what we call the motorcycle plan, and the motorcycle plan is, the metaphor is, you have to be very careful, it'll get you where you want to go, much less expensive, but you really have to pay attention, just like on a motorcycle. And that is coming to our program, doing 90 meetings in 90 days, those are 12-step meetings, and coming to our weekly therapy group, doing an educational program through using the materials that are about the 30 tasks of sex addiction recovery, and individual sessions as needed. And so that works really, really well. And then in the third session, approximately, this doesn't always go exactly like that, we bring in the spouse. And the spouse is really, really important because of something I call the homeostatic mechanism, which means that in a system, it tends to right itself. So if there's something going on, in this case addiction, even though the spouse and the sex addict are very, very interested in getting better, sometimes they're used to the old way. So I like to warn them what that sabotage could look like. It's not overt, but it could be like, we want you to stay home instead of go to meetings, or we want you to not have so many feelings because we're not used to having you have feelings, things like that. So having that spouse there, we also help them figure out what they need for support, because it's not fair to just give support to the sex addict. We also then talk to them about the possibility of having a timeout of sex and abstinence plan, and that is optional and they get to choose, and we talk about why that is useful. And we really cement that relationship and let them know who their partner is going to work with, and it's been really, really important to get the spouse in early. Okay?
The next phase is what we call developing the plan. So part of that process that we use is the 3 circles. And so we use the 3 circles as a contract that I like to give them a piece of paper and have them actually draw the circles and fill those out together in an individual session, and then we both sign it and date it, and make a copy of it, and that is a contract between myself and the client. It is a totally non-legal, non-binding document that we both agree to uphold and make no changes without the other one's consent. And so we do that and keep a file of that in the records. We go over all of the barriers that they're going to have to treatments in the 12-step meetings, and we look at other early recovery issues. A couple of those barriers that we hear a lot are I'm a very important person, I can't go to meetings, I might know somebody there in the meeting. And we quickly have to remind them that they have to realize that everybody in the meeting is there for the same reason, and so their confidentiality is probably pretty secure. Some other things that we hear is the wife won't let me, or there's the issue of time and money, and so we'll go over all of those in our presentation.
You know, since this is, we think all addiction is a shame-based disease, a lot of those barriers come around to I'm embarrassed, or I'm guilty, or I'm shameful. And we help normalize that, help them understand that that's normal, and that this is too important for them not to get the help that they need. And if they tell us it's not enough time or money, we say divorce costs a lot more money than treatment does, yes. And besides, we want you to succeed and be there for your family. One of the things that we do is we do what I call the dip chart, or the Jelinek chart, and we help people take a look at very quickly where they're at. So we show them this chart, and we say that this chart is the chart they use for all addictions. And in the early part of the chart, it shows that we know if someone, for example, with alcohol, if they go to a kegger and then they have a blackout and they get drunk a certain amount of times or have a DUI, we can predict that they're going to be an alcoholic. The same thing with sex addiction. And what we try to do is we try to bring the bottom up to where they are today, right? And so right there, and we say you don't have to go any further down here to where you're kind of really bottomed out if we can get you started on treatment today. But sometimes they say, nope, I need to go a little lower. And so we say, okay, if you leave here today and you choose not to do it, you are on, I can write this here because I have a good angle here. We call this the path of pain. And we make it really clear, if you choose not to be here, you're basically choosing what we call the path of pain. And you're welcome to come back anytime you want. We'd like to keep the bottom as high as we can, but sometimes that's not within our power to do so. But we know that the minute they say yes to treatment, they cross over to the other side, which is the recovery path, and they have an honest desire for help over here, and they move up the ladder and hopefully end up higher than where they started. So that's really what we do, and that's helped a lot of people. They say, I don't want the path of pain, I'll start the treatment now. The last thing that we do is we get them started then on going to those 90 meetings in 90 days. Even though that's a challenge, we think it's important. We tell them that this is a problem of intensity, and we treat the problem of intensity with the intensity of the solution. We work with the Patrick Carnes 30 task materials because we really believe in those, and all the different workbooks and exercises and things that make a difference there. We use those in group. They start coming to our weekly group, which they love because it's the same people every week. They form a strong bond of trust. Sometimes our groups, people come for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years because it's so useful. And we really help them get started, and we've had tremendous success with this, and it's been really useful.
One of the things I want to emphasize is the groups, those guys build such a rapport with each other that it becomes kind of like their trusted advisors. It's the people that they look to find those blind spots in our lives, because we all have them.
And we say that you need the 12-step groups for that unconditional support, and you come to the therapy group, number one, because it's facilitated. We make sure nobody gets hurt or does anything that will be difficult. But we use what we call sandpaper support, which is that idea that somehow it's a little rough, but it's still in a loving way. For example, last week you said this week you said that, which is it, but it's from people who care about you. So that's what we do, and like I said, we've had tremendous success with this, and we're pretty good at getting people to come to the program, and we're pretty proud of what we do, yeah, and we also enjoy what we do, and I hope this has been helpful for you in understanding a little bit more about how maybe you could get yourself and or your clients to get the kind of help that they need.